And he's going for it. It's a touchdown!
Welcome to the Shades Cahaba Oral History Project. I'm your host, Sean Wright. I hope you enjoyed the last episode with my guest, former Homewood Principal and Superintendent Michael Gross. We talked about the start of the Homewood school system and the unique set of challenges he faced as he helped build the high school from scratch. There are a lot of similarities between the beginnings of Shades Cahaba High School and Homewood High School. If you haven't heard the first episode with him, I encourage you to go back and listen. In fact, you should listen to all the episodes in this podcast series. For this episode, I pulled out all the stories about athletics from my interview with him and are sharing them here. Mr. Gross starts things off by talking about his first coaches.
Our first football coach was Alvin Bressler. He was an all-SEC receiver from Auburn University, and he was very dynamic and had a lot of good ideas, and the players really bought into him. They loved him. We got some really good assistant coaches. The same thing for basketball. Dave Beeson was at the junior high, but he stayed as the high school basketball coach, and they loved Dave Beeson and the rest of the other sports. Girls sports, there was no gymnastics back then. There was no volleyball back then. They had archery. They had very few sports. But anyway, whatever we had, we were able to provide for the girls. We didn't have a football field, and we played some of our B team games at Sanford, but it was too expensive to play there. So I went to the principal at Berry, and she, for a very reasonable fee, allowed us to play our high school games there. In the meantime, we were building a stadium out in West Homewood, and the mayor allowed us to use his employees and some of the folks we had that were very involved and knew about construction. They built it themselves, built about a $500,000 stadium that would have cost over $1 million to build. And that was all a lake bed, too, so they had to fill that in. So we opened up where those seniors played at Berry for their home games. Athletic equipment. I had nothing. Now, we did have some equipment from the junior high when we were adding a grade, but when you start the high school and start a high school football schedule, basketball, we had nothing. And I wasn't going to get equipment that wasn't safe. We were going to get the right equipment. And Alvin Bressler and Dave Beeson and all of them worked with me, particularly Alvin. We had to get all that football equipment, practice equipment. We had to get the home jerseys and home and away equipment, and I didn't have any money. And Fred Sinkton came to see me. And other stores were not good too, but he said, "Mike, you can order whatever you want. I'm not going to charge you any interest. And you pay it back when you can." And we had those kind of people. We had those kind of people wanted to get involved and wanted to help us. And believe it or not, I was able to pay Fred back everything in 3 years. And that's how we got the equipment. And Alvin told me recently, he said, Fred Sinkton said, "Whatever you need, come down to the store and just charge it. Don't worry about it." That's the kind of cooperation we had.
I've talked with former player Wade Kirkpatrick.
Good one.
He's put together a book that'll be coming out soon. By the time this interview goes out, the one with Wade will have already gone out, but he's written a book called Fighting Patriots, the First 3 Years of Homewood Football.
Early years.
And basically it talks about within 3 years of the football team starting, they won a state championship in 1974. What are your memories leading up to that? How old was Alvin Bressler when he was hired?
He was in his 20s.
I think he was 23.
Yeah, his 20s.
He was 26 when he won the state championship.
There was a lot of enthusiasm, not only with the players in all the sports, but with the fans, with the students. I had great pep rallies, red, white, and blue, Patriots. A lot of enthusiasm in that city because they never really had their own city football team. And, of course, football was king at that time in the South, and it still is. So the enthusiasm was there. And the other thing that Alvin and his team started doing that's never been done with an early school was winning. And the other sports, too. It was winning. See, there were only 4 classifications back then, and we were 4A. We were 4 class. But the state put us in a terrible region. We were in the Tuscaloosa region. And with Hueytown and Bessemer, and I think Bessemer was in there, and all the schools in all the big schools in Tuscaloosa. And it was tough competition, but we could compete. And they would have the crippled children's game or something like that, and we played the top city team. We lost, barely lost. The Banks, they were the big thing. And we finally, in the playoffs, came back and we beat them. And we were beating all the big teams or holding our own with them when we played them. And we had great athletes. We had great kids. I think Alvin said he had like 23 seniors the year that they won the state. And just a lot of enthusiasm, people getting behind the program. Parents would come out and watch practices. I remember Peter Brash was on the team, and his dad used to come out and watch practice. And even when he was at Vestavia, when I went to Vestavia, Peter was a defensive coach, a heck of a coach. And then his dad would come out to all the practice. You know, people like that. And gracious people. I'm not talking just about money. I'm talking about it was Patriot land, and everything was red, white, and blue. And the city was behind us 110%, and certainly the parents were behind us. And it was just a lot of fun and a lot of spirit.
Again, a theme that keeps going through all the way from Shades Cahaba to now is that the parents getting behind. It's when when Shades Cahaba needed the books, the parents got behind. Wade was telling me that one of the big things about the Homewood football was the Boosters Club and the parents getting behind and supporting them and doing everything that needed to be done, especially when there wasn't money and things at the time.
There was a man in those early years, and never had any kids. He was an older gentleman, never had any kids, very wealthy man, but he was friends of some of our parents and some of our city officials. And I had athletic passes, which I gave to the city council and the mayor. And I gave him an athlete. I've invited him to everything. Boy, he said, Mike, can I come to the first banquet? I said, certainly. He said, you can be a guest. I wasn't going to let anybody not want to come, and they wanted to come. And it was in our cafeteria. And I'll never forget our speaker, what's his name, who has the Boys Ranch.
John Kroll.
He was our first speaker. He did a great job. And
he'd have been probably right out of college about that.
Yes, he was. The gentleman says, can I make a speech? And he said, yes. Can I say a few words? And he got up there and he said he appreciated how I was treated. He didn't even live in Homewood. And we just felt like I was part of everything. He said, I want to give you this check for the athletic program to help go towards your expenses. And he hands me a check for $10,000. So when you have people like that don't even live in the city or have any ties to the city that supported our program. And the same thing for math team and debate team. We had great booster clubs for them. And theater and the band. And it was just kind of a team effort it wasn't one team, it was everybody was part of that team.
We mentioned the stadium is built on the side of West Homewood Park. It's in the western part of Homewood. It's not next to the school, like in a lot of cases. What was the reasoning for that?
Property. We didn't have the property to build it by the school. As you can see on either side of the school, there was nothing that could handle that. The mayor was instrumental, and that property was part of the park system, and he was instrumental in getting a lot for it. So we named the stadium after him. It's Waldrop Stadium. I'll never forget the story about Alvin, his character, but he was a good character. We were playing Barry, and Barry was undefeated, just beating everybody, beating by a large score. So
Barry back in the day, they were the Alabama.
That's right.
They were dominant, kind of like they are now.
And we had to play Barry at Barry. So Alvin says, well, I'm going to try to shake things up. He said, I'm not going to show up until kickoff. So we're down there at the practice field, and everybody turns on their car headlights, so they can warm up down there, and he loads them up on the bus. We get there at kickoff, and they still beat us by 40 points.
Didn't work.
But he was great, and we tried to make it first class for the students. We let them, when we won the state, we let them travel in Greyhounds, and they deserved it, and they deserved the best. And it was tough back then because we were a small high school, and we were 4A, and we were playing all the tough teams, and it was tough.
I did like those natural rivalries, playing the Mount Brook, Vestavia, Barry, Shades Valley. That was I look forward to that every year. It's tough to get excited about. We're going to play some team that you don't even know where they are. They might be a great team, but
they might be in their region, and they don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I think Mount Brook's back in our region this year, so we'll get another natural rivalry.
You mean they're dropping from 7A to 6A? Is that right? I didn't know that. We won the state championship on the field and in court.
Yeah, Yeah, tell me about that. I read a little bit about the court case.
We were in the Tuscaloosa region, and I'm not going to say the name of the high school, but when the playoffs were about to start, this particular team had an ineligible player because of his age. And in this particular city where the school went into court, and the judge said they could change his age with a family Bible. Then the court order was sent to State High School Athletic Association, and they were under a court order, and they in the playoffs, and we were out. Well, we weren't too very pleased about that. So we went into Jefferson County Court. And of course, I had to have the board backing and the superintendent backing. We, with our school attorney, we went into the Jefferson County Court and got a court order to stop the playoffs until this was settled. So we could go before the state. And even the person at the Bureau of Vital Statistics said, how can anybody, I'm going to have a heck of a problem when everybody comes down here and changes their age for one reason or another. So we had them, not part of our suit, but they're on our side. Finally, we got enough evidence. We asked it go to the state Supreme Court, we're the only school in the state Supreme Court. We asked the state Supreme Court to make the decision, can you have a substitute Bible? They ruled back initially in favor of the State High School Athletic Association, which said that kid was ineligible. Thus, they were out of the playoffs, and we were in. So we won it on the field, we won it in court. There were some things that happened after that for a few months that we had to deal with, but we were able to deal with it. And as I said, we won it in court and we won it on the field.
Did it hold up the playoffs?
No, because everything, we were working around the clock. See, we had about a week's notice, and we got into court right away, and it was finally the state Supreme Court knew they had to make a ruling right away, and it was okay. It was a lot of hard work by a lot of people, but we, and here again, it kind of brought the community together,
right,
and the school particularly together. That's what that was about. You asked me about the school system and why I was the first. I consider it a privilege, and I was really lucky that the city, the school board, and the superintendent allowed me to be the first principal and be a part of that. It was a privilege to be part of Homewood.
Thanks again to Michael Gross for letting me speak with him about Homewood. It was a real treat to catch up with him and reminisce about the old days. Now, you heard us speak about the book, Fighting Patriots, the first 3 years of Homewood High School football. Well, that book should be coming out this spring, so be on the lookout for it. Author Wade Kirkpatrick was featured in a special episode of the podcast, so make sure you go back and listen to it. And congratulations to Mr. Gross's daughter and Homewood grad, Colonel Jennifer Gross Chapman, who just retired from the U.S. Army. Mr. Gross was beaming with pride when he spoke about her career and upcoming retirement. In fact, I could have made a whole episode just on the pride and love of his family, which includes both daughters, his wife, and his dog, who you may have heard in the background while we spoke.